it's just business, or I was just doing my job. These are phrases that we often hear when someone is about to do something that they know is wrong, or with all due respect, and what I want to talk about in this video is the propitiation of evil or moral fraud. Because we live in a inherently evil society, and it is something that when you come to that realization based on your assessments of people's actions and behaviors and their mindset, it is something that is very hard for you to live with, and it's something that is very hard for you to deal with, because we go through life every day hurting each other on purpose, and then we do a sort of mental gymnastics to excuse the evil things that we're doing. When the thought popped into my head that people are just evil and we're just going around, and hurting each other, I was like a bit confused, because I'm like, is there a difference between bad and evil? Like, is there really a difference? Of course, I had to look it up. Like, what is bad? What is considered bad? I know that how we conduct ourselves in our day-to-day life, good and bad, seems more like point of views rather than abstract objective forms of reality. And so when I looked up bad is something harmful that may cause pain, to somebody, but it is not done intentionally. So an example of bad would be like a nurse who messes up a patient's medication simply because they were either lazy or too tired. So there was no intent to commit harm, right? But evil is intentional. You are fully aware that what you're doing is wrong, but you do it anyway. Either because it is convenient, I was just doing my job, or because you are expecting to gain something from it. You're either going to get money or a promotion or some satisfaction or pleasure. So an example of evil would be you go to the doctor sees you, and after an assessment, they try to push medication on you that the doctor knows you do not need. But because they are expecting a big commission, every patient that walks in their practice, they sort of force that medication on them, whether they need it or not. So that would be an act of evil. And so the objective of this video is for us to assess our actions, to assess the things that we do and say to each other, and decide whether or not what we're doing is evil. Because if you know that what you're doing is wrong and you're doing it anyway, then what you're doing is an act of evil. And I want to bring it in the context of the workplace, or the broader capitalistic society that we live in, because that is how we operate. Everybody shape their lives around their job. The first thing that I want to talk about is the bad faith bargain. So the interview, that is the first place that the evil begins. Interviews are not generally set up to determine who is the best candidate for the job. That's not what they're set up for. But that's what they would like you to believe. And if you look at the whole setup of the interview process, it is an exercise in psychological manipulation. It forces you to lie. It's this theatrical performance that you have to undertake in order to secure a spot in somebody's employment. But of course, it is what everyone else is doing, and if everyone else is doing it, then it can't be wrong. Gee, I wonder what you might say about slavery. So you go into this interview, and the first thing they have you sitting out there waiting. It's just one of those things I never understand. They schedule an interview with you, and they say, come at 10 o'clock. And you go at 10, and there are 15 other persons waiting. And it's like, you should schedule your interviews based on, if I have 10 people for the day, and there is one recruiter, how long does it normally take to interview a person? Because you would have had this information based on previous interviews that you have done. And of course, there is a time frame. So if the interview typically lasts 45 minutes, then you don't schedule, 10 people to come in at the same time, knowing full well that each interview lasts 45 minutes and there's one person doing the interview. Because now, to me, that is disrespectful of my time. You're going to have me sitting there the whole day, right? Just so I can beg you for a job, essentially. When you could have scheduled each candidate based on what time you think the other candidate might be done interviewing, so that when each person comes, they probably won't wait for more than 15 minutes before they are escorted into the interview room and you will conduct your interviews. They'll ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it's like, what does that have to do with the job? No, you can't honestly tell them where you see yourself in 5 years, because if where you see yourself in 5 years is paying off your student loan debt, buying a house, buying a car, going on your dream vacation, getting married, starting your own business, you can't tell them that. Because if you tell them that, you're not getting that job. You have to tell them, oh, I see myself growing in the company. Like, really? None of us sees ourselves in any company for 5 years when we go to no interview. But that's what you have to tell them, because they don't want you to have any plans outside the organization. So you are forced to lie. Tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. What does that have to do with the actual job? Because if you tell them, one of my weaknesses is that I suffer from burnout because I have to work so hard just to impress my superiors, so I can be nominated for top processor or employee of the month to get the extra $15,000 to make up the little pay that they're giving me. So that is one of my weaknesses. I push myself too hard, I burn out just so I can impress these people to get the little extra on my pay at the end of the month. You can't tell them that. Because if you tell them that, they're not going to hire you, because you're bad-mouthing your former boss. If your boss was horrible to you, you can't go in the interview and why did you leave your last job? If you're being overworked and underpaid, you can't tell them that in the interview. I'm just looking forward to a new opportunity, yada yada. You are being forced to lie. The interviewer knows that you cannot come in that interview and tell them the truth when they ask you these questions. So you are forced to put on this performance in order to secure your spot. It's this theater of lies that you have to engage in. They're not, because to me, an interview, you've seen my resume, and the fact that I'm sitting before you suggests to me that you have determined that I am competent enough based on what you see on paper to do the job. So the next thing for you to determine is just basically you want to see the person, right, to get a vibe. Because more often than not, decisions are made based off a gut feeling. What your gut tells you. Go with this one. Or the person walks in and you really like them, you like their energy, whatever, you go with them, right? But essentially, there are probably 3 things that you want to know, right? That really and truly, it's still not really dependent. It's dependent on that gut feeling, because there is no reasonable expectation that the person is going to be honest. There can be no reasonable expectation of honesty. Because if you ask me why I leave my job and the job was actually a horrible workplace, and I tell you it's a charge against me, you're going to use that against me. The truth is not welcomed in the interview. So you want to know, can I do the job? Are my qualifications real. I didn't just make up a resume and send to you. And you don't need to ask me about, well, you probably can ask me some stuff based on my experience to see if I actually have the experience. And that could give you an insight into whether or not I'm making stuff up. And of course, you would want to verify with the past employers and the learning institutions if I've actually enrolled in those institutions and acquired the qualifications that I put on my resume. Right? So when I come in the interview, you maybe want to ask me questions about my previous job to gauge if I actually did those things that I say I did, which I would need to prepare for, because if I have the experience and you're asking me about those specific experiences, then of course I can just say, yeah, I did this. This is what I engage in. Then you want to know if what you want, the kind of person that you want for the role, is I am that kind of person. So you would want to perhaps give me an idea of what a typical day looks like in this role, right? And ask me if this is something that I want. Do you think that is this meeting your expectation? Is this something that you think that you want to do, right? And of course, there's still no reasonable expectation of honesty, but at the very least, you're giving me an opportunity to bow out gracefully, to say, no, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna come here 7 days a week and work for 16 hours. I'm not doing that. So thank you for the opportunity and goodbye. But they don't do that. They're not telling you that this is what a typical day looks like. This is what we expect you to do if we employ you. Do you think that this is something that you want to do? They're not doing that. They're asking you all these stupid questions. How do you handle stress? And I'm like, why would I be stressed at work? The people are literally asking you these questions. How do you handle stress? And it's like, if you are marshalling resources correctly, right? If you are planning, directing, controlling, as you should, then why would I be having to deal with stress? Now, I do know that there are eventualities that will come up that is outside the control of the organization. For instance, when I worked in the hotel, you may have a situation where there's a delayed flight and they call the hotel to say, hey, flight just canceled and we need 30 rooms. Those 30 rooms were not planned for, right? And you want to make the sale, you want to make the money because it's 30 rooms and these people are leaving in a few hours. So it's quick, easy money, and those 30 rooms value more to you than the other rooms that are at the hotel, because those people won't be staying for very long and they won't be eating all that food. So they're paying the full cost of, well, they do give them discounts. So they're covering the room cost plus your markup, right? And they are costing you less than the average guest. So of course, you want those 30 rooms. So you would marshal your staff to say, hey guys, we've got 30 rooms coming from Virgin Holidays and everybody needs to get their ducks in a row so that we can check in them fast and everything runs smoothly. Fine, I can understand that because it's a one-off situation. But if you're asking me, how do I handle stress? It simply means that you are understaffed and so the work environment is stressful, and I will now have to work double time, do double the volume of work that a person is supposed to do just to get the target, just to meet the targets. That's a toxic work environment. Work is not supposed to be stressful. You're supposed to have sufficient resources on hand to meet the demands of the job. So why is that a question? Right? So these are the things that they do, right? That just are acts of evil because they are forcing you to lie. And then there is this salary negotiation. It's a bad faith discussion. You do not have any information, at least for us in Jamaica. I know in the UK, they have laws that I suppose compels the employers to be upfront about what the position offers and so on. And more often than not, you know even before you enter into a particular career field that, okay, when you're just starting out, this is what you get after X amount of years, you're bumped up to this. So at least you can plan out your career and determine if based on your lifestyle. But in Jamaica and the Caribbean, at least, we don't have that. Nobody knows what a role is valued at. Right? So when we walking into an interview, there can be no salary negotiation, because how are you going to negotiate what you don't know? So it's a bad faith discussion. And what people don't understand is that there is this thing called shareholder primacy. Businesses are there to maximize profits for shareholders. So at the end of the day, and I think there was a landmark case in the United States, Ford versus Dodge, you can look it up. And that's where, the shareholder primacy rule, I guess, became like legal precedence. I think Henry Ford was making a lot of profit, and he wanted to pay his employees more, give them more time off, make their life a little bit easier. And the Dodge brothers, I think they were Jews, unsurprisingly, took him to court because I think they had a 10% stake in the company. They were like, you can't do that. It's our money. You can't give the excess profits to the employees. How dare you? That's our money. Give us our money. And the court sided with Dodge. Right? So your salary is viewed as an expense. It's a part of overheads. So it means that employees are viewed as a liability. You are a liability to the company. So the company's objective is to reduce liabilities or control liabilities as best as possible. That is why whenever a company goes into any kind of revenue crunch, the first thing they do is cut staff. They start laying off people and they freeze wages. Because you're seen, so there is no value placed on you. You are not valued. I know we like to think that, I am worth this, and you're not worth anything to the company. You are just a tool to be used and discarded whenever they are done with you. Your 10, 15, 20 years that you have with a company means nothing. I think there was this news item a couple months ago where a guy was working at, I think it was Walmart or one of those large chains in the US for 40 years. And the regional manager called him and said, congratulations. And I think he got a pin. 40 years you've been working with a company, and all you got was a pin. You see, but that's just business, right? That's just business. The whole salary negotiation is an act because they have all the information. They know what the pay band is. They know what they budget for the role. They know what other employees are getting, and they have information about pay scales within their industry. You don't. You don't know what the other employees at the company are getting. You don't know what they have budgeted for the role. And they're not going to give you any form of information that is verifiable so that you can negotiate in good faith. So there is no good faith negotiation that you're having with respect to what you should be compensated. Because you have to understand their role when they're making that offer is to offer you as little as possible, is to save the company money. And they're going in there intentionally doing that. And that's evil. But it's just business. I'm just doing my job. These are the comfortable lies we tell ourselves to carry out these acts of evil in our daily lives. We hurt people. And we know that we're hurting people. We know that what we're doing is wrong, but we do it anyway. And that intentional acts of harm are not considered bad. Bad is when you're negligent. Evil is when you know that what you're doing is wrong and you do it anyway. And that brings me, to the ecosystem of evil, where when we look inside these workplaces and we talk about, the toxic work environment, we have these toxic bosses, and we don't understand that when you're hired, that's when the theater begins. So You have to work yourself to the bone in order to be recognized. And not recognized monetarily. It just puts you in the boss's good graces. That is evil. If you have integrity, God help you. God help you if you have integrity. They do all these things. You have to work. So let me give you an example. So, I got an email from my supervisor to say this has been your, because they have these awards that they give out at the end of each month. So you have the top processor and you have the employee of the month. You can win one or the other, not both, right? And so she sent me my assessment, and I had a score of 99.98%, right? I didn't have 100%. So I'm like, what is the 0.02% for? So I'm looking at the metrics and accuracy, that everything is 100%, but my attendance was 99.98%. So I'm saying, but I was never late. So I went back to the time recording system and I went through, because I'm like, when did I come in late? And I started to go through my time card. And there was one morning, because we have to clock into this system online, right? And the system was down. No, I was refreshing and refreshing and refreshing and refreshing and refreshing. And I was able to clock in, I think, either 1 minute or some seconds. I think it was 52 seconds after 7. So my shift starts at 7 and I clocked in at 7 o'clock and 52 seconds. Not because I was late, but because there was an issue with the system. No, it never crossed my mind that I should have created a missed punch. Because I'm like, it's 52 seconds, I'm not late. Obviously, anyone who is looking at it would know that obviously I would have been sitting at my desk before 7 o'clock in order to clock in at 7 o'clock and 52 seconds. So when I spoke to my supervisor, I'm like, why is my attendance 99.98%? I was never late or whatever. And she said to me, she had 100% there. And the powers that be called her and told her to change it because of those. I think there were 2 mornings when I had a couple seconds after 7 o'clock. Not because I was late, but because, like I said, the system, because whenever you have a lot of people trying to clock in at the same time, the system freezes up. And that can go on for a while. So I had that situation where the system was freezing up on me, and that is why I clocked in a couple seconds after 7 o'clock. And she's like, they told her to change it. It's not 100%. I was not 100% on time. So of course, that now becomes a charge against me in the running for the employee of the month or the top processor, because you didn't you weren't at your desk from 6:30. This is what people do, And these are people who, most of them are very pious. You would think that they and the Christ are some distant relatives. The way they act holier than thou. And they don't see these things as acts of evil. Because I'm just doing my job. It's just business. These are the lies that we tell. I had one supervisor, not my most recent supervisor. When I just started, I had a supervisor, and I had gone to lunch. And during the time when I went to lunch, she was calling me on Teams, because we use Microsoft Teams. And so when I came back from lunch, it was time for us to clock out and leave. So of course, I'm not checking anything. I came from lunch. It was 5 minutes before the shift ends, so I'm not checking anything. I start bringing up, the clock out system and logging into the system and just watching the countdown, and I clocked out. Right? Went home. It was a Friday. I came back the Monday, log in the system, everything. And then I saw a missed call from my supervisor. So I'm like, okay. So I started to check to see if I had a ping from her in Teams. Didn't see any ping. I didn't receive any message from her over the weekend on my personal phone. And so I started to check my email to see if there was a message, because I'm like, okay, she was calling me, maybe it was something important. And I'm assuming if it is something important, then you would have left a message, right? If you're calling me and you're not getting me, then the next thing is to try another mode of communication, which would be sending me a private message in Teams or sending me an email, right? Or even if it's important, you would send a message to my personal phone, because they do that all the time. So I didn't see any message from her, so I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I guess it wasn't important. That was my mistake. I got a call from this lady. Mind you, I'm new, so I think I was still within the 3 months probationary period. Yes, I was still within the 3 months probationary period, right? I think it was like 2 months in. So she called me, and then she said I should share my screen. Normally, during training, we share our screen for them to kind of like show us stuff. Sometimes we even give control of the screen for them to do whatever and show us. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is a training, maybe there's something that she wants to show me, whatever. So I shared my screen. It never even crossed my mind that anything was wrong. So she said, bring up Teams. So I'm like, okay, I brought up Teams. But remember now, these are private messages, because you can have conversations with HR, you can have conversations with your manager. So nobody should be calling you and telling you to share your Teams. They shouldn't do that. Right? Because these are private conversations that I'm having. You're not privy to those conversations. But this was happening so fast that it never occurred to me, like, lady, what are you doing, right? And remember, then I am new. I just got the job 2 months ago. So, all of this, it was in hindsight that I realized just how out of order she was. Then she said, go to your notification. So I went to the notification. And she said, oh, so the call did go through. Did you not see a missed call from me? I said, yes, when I came in this morning and I was checking, I saw a missed call from you, but I didn't see any follow-up message, so I thought it wasn't important. That's not how you're supposed to deal with things. If you see a missed call from me, you are supposed to get back to me and find out what was going on. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You are supposed to exhaust all means of communication to get to me if there is something that you want to say. If you are calling me and you're not getting me, then the next thing would be to send me a message. That's how I know it. I have never had a situation where somebody was trying to reach me and then they're sitting there waiting for me to call them back. If it's important, you leave a message. Or you try some other way to get to me. Why must I now go out of my way to call you back to figure out if you really needed me for something? It's work. And if it is something important, then send a message. Send me an email. Hey, I was trying to reach you. Get back to me as soon as you get this message. That's how it works. That's what normal people do. And this lady was like I was talking gibberish. And it was in hindsight when I was saying it to someone at work. They're like, no, she's out of order. She can't do that. And I was like, well, she did. And they're like, but I'm like, it never, like, while it was happening so fast, my brain was just not registering that what she was doing was out of order. It was after the fact that I'm like, wait a minute, what just happened? You can't, but it's already happened. You know what I mean? So these are the kinds of things that people do. And this lady's a Christian, the holier than thou type. People engage. It is so easy for us to do these things because it has become commonplace. We know that what we're doing is harmful to people. And I keep telling people, your job is not your life, it's not your soul. And I don't know how you clock in and leave your integrity at the gate. And as I say that, when I was working at the hotel, there was a complaint that was levied against me by a guest. And of course, I don't lie. Because I'm like, the worst you can do is fire me. That's the worst you can do. You can't put hands on me. You can't do that. If you could, then I may be incentivized to lie. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to get my ass beat. But I know you can't beat me. The worst you can do to me is say, don't come back here. Pack your shit and go. And I'm good with that. So I don't need to lie to you. Right? So they got the report. They asked me to write my report. So of course I wrote from start to finish what happened, because my reports are always detailed, extremely detailed. I'm telling you every single thing that I can recall that happened. I'm not leaving anything out. And that is why usually in my service encounters with difficult guests, I am intentional in what I say. Because I'm not going to lie. So whatever I am telling you, I am going to go in that meeting and repeat it. I'll go in any interview and repeat it. I'll go on international TV and repeat it. Because I always ensure that I am intentional in what I am saying. So of course, I think it had to do with an armband issue where the lady did not want to wear the armband. She wanted me to give it to her. And I'm like, no ma'am, the policy is that you have to wear the band on your arm. Because if I give the band to you, you can give it to somebody else. They already know that you're a guest, you're registered here. You can, go to security. Let's say you leave and you don't have the band. You can always say, hey, call up the front desk. I'm in so-and-so. You give an ID. I'm a registered guest. They'll let you up. But if you give the band to somebody else, they can use that band to access the property and the service, and it's an all-inclusive. So I can't give you the band. If you don't want to wear it, that's fine. I'm just not going to give you a band. But know that when you go to the service outlets, they're going to ask you for it. So she wrote this report and she embellished the encounter and she lied. Oh, I was so rude and this and that and blah, blah, blah. So, of course, HR got the report and they had a meeting with me. Now, of course, the way the guests portrayed the service encounter never happened. Right? So my report was, the two reports were like night and day. And the HR said to me, but what you're reporting is totally different from what the guest has. I said, but you have cameras. There are cameras at the front desk. You don't need to listen to what I have to say. You don't need to listen to what she has to say. Roll back the cameras and review the encounter. And then you can try to match up what I am saying with what she's saying and what the camera is showing and see if there are any discrepancies between the reports. You don't need to listen to us. When she found out, because normally when you have these, because HR is another thing, when you have these HR disciplinary hearings, they are not there to find out what happened, It's what people don't know. They would have concluded whether or not, well, once they call you, obviously they have concluded that you were in the wrong, and they would have devised whatever punishment, whether they were going to give you a written warning, a suspension, or termination. So if something happens and you're called into an HR hearing, they have already decided what to do. They are not interested in anything that you have to say. What they will do is craft the questions in such a way that leads you to answer the question to support the conclusions that they have drawn. Always. And that's an act of evil. Because you're pretending to be interested in what happened when you know good and well that you have absolutely no interest in anything that happened. You just want to ask me the questions to back me into a corner to justify the conclusions that you have drawn. So when I explained and I told him I have no reason to lie, right? Because I don't care if I lose this job. That's what I told her. And then she said, Nikoi, sometimes you have to leave yourself at the gate. I kid you not. The HR manager said to me that sometimes you have to leave yourself at the gate. My response to her was, if I leave myself at the gate, my empathy also stays. You can't have it both ways. It cannot be that when a customer is rude and disrespectful to me, I must not let it bother me. I must not say anything. I must be stoic and unmovable. But when they have a problem, all of a sudden, I must just switch on and be the most empathetic and caring person in the world. I said, you can't have it both ways. I'm either going to be, it's a flat line, one emotion across the board. Don't care. I am polite and professional, and that's all you're getting. I should not be working in a place that people are allowed to be disrespectful. We are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, and we ought to conduct ourselves within the realm of civility. So if I am being civilized, the guest or the customer has to be civilized as well. It's just that simple. If they are being disruptive and disrespectful, you ask them to leave. Because the service encounter involves two people. And while I understand that there may be certain situations that arise that causes a customer to be upset, it is never justified for the customer to be disrespectful to the service staff. You can be upset all you want about the situation, and we can work through it. But when you're personally attacking me, which often is what happens, the attacks become personal. They start attacking you, the individual, as if you are the one who has wronged them. Like, no, you had you have an issue with a product or whatever the situation. Maybe it has nothing to do with me personally. You're just coming to me to bring the situation to my attention. So you can't now get personal and begin to attack me personally. That doesn't make any sense, right? But they often do that, and then you're just supposed to smile. I'm not doing that because you're not talking to me like that. We're going to have a civilized conversation, and I'm going to do my best to assist you. But the moment you descend into fits of uncivilized behavior, the service encounter ends with me. So, these are the things that happen, and it's just business as usual. It's just your job. And people think that it is okay for them to act in these kinds of ways. And then these are the same people who are religious. They commit acts of moral fraud. So you lowball a candidate in an interview on Monday, and you're leading praise and worship on Sunday. It's just business. I was just doing my job. A staff show you up at work, and you begin now to sabotage them. Passive-aggressive behavior. Just every little thing that they do, you start to, you're giving them warnings or a write-up because you're trying to get back at them. And you're at Bible study Wednesday night. The most interesting thing that I find is that the most religious a person is the more evil they are. It is, and if you're religious, that might trigger you. So I'm going to ask you a question. Ask yourself this question. If God should come right in this moment as you're listening to me, where do you think your soul will be? Is it well with your soul? Religious people are the most evil people that I have come across. And that is why I left the church. The most evil people that I've encountered. These people will wish death upon you while telling you to give your life to the Lord. It's triggering, I know. But ask yourself this question while you're being triggered. Is it well with my soul? If God should come right now, Allah, Muhammad, whatever your God is, where will your soul be right in this moment as you're watching this video? Where will your soul be? Are you walking according to your faith? Are you living the life that your faith demands? Because what I have noticed, especially in the workplace, the most vindictive people, the most toxic managers are the religious ones. The most evil and vile managers in the workplace are the religious ones. And I say that without apology. Make it make sense. You cannot put your job before your religion. You cannot put your job before your integrity. You cannot compromise your morals and your values for a job. Because at the end of the day, when you are in judgment hall, it's just business. It's not a defense. I was just doing my job. It's not a defense. You know, I want to be a good person. And so, whenever in my dealings with others, I have this mental audit that I'm doing of my actions. This is why sometimes when people say, oh, you're so this or you're so that, it doesn't faze me because I have no ill will or ill intention towards anybody. I speak from the heart and I speak truthfully. And that is why it is so difficult for me to survive in the workplace, because I'm just not going to pretend. I'm just not going to participate in these micro acts of evil like everybody else. And I refuse to do it. Even in interviews, I always see on TikTok where people are saying, oh, you can't tell the truth in the interview, you have to lie. I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. There are ways to answer those questions that do not compromise your integrity. I am not lying to you to get a job. I'm not doing it. I'm not lying to you to keep my job either. But a lot of people do it. And if you have to excuse what you're doing, it is evil. Because you know that what you're doing is wrong. And you are doing a sort of mental gymnastics to pacify yourself as to why you are allowed to do what you're doing. There was this experiment, the Milgram experiment. I think it happened in 1969. You can Google it. And in this experiment, ordinary people were told by the researchers that they were to deliver deadly jolts of electricity to another human being. In some instances, the participants in the study were told that the voltage, if administered, would kill the person. Of course, they were not able to see who was on the other side of the screen. So they were in one room and the person was in another room. And the scientists would tell them, this person is a bad person and we need you to push this button. It's going to administer 400,000 volts of electricity, and this might cause them to go in cardiac arrest, or this might kill them, or they'll tell them what it will do to the person. And an overwhelming majority of ordinary people pushed that fucking button. Even when they were told that if you push the button, it's going to kill the person on the other side of the room. And what would happen is, so they hired an actor. So when you push the button, the actor would pretend that, they were receiving the jolts of electricity and they would scream or whatever. And even when people heard the screams, they would still push the button. Why would they do that? Because they could outsource the blame. I didn't want to push the button, but this authority figure told me to push it. So blame him. It's not my fault. I didn't want to come into this interview and lowball you on the salary, but if I save the company an extra $100,000 for the year, I'll get a bonus, or I'll get 2% of that. It's not me, it's just business. We are a bunch of evil suckers walking around pretending to be good. And it's about time somebody call it out. I am calling you out on your evil. You're evil. If you're overworking and underpaying people, you're evil. It's evil because you know what you're doing. If you're convincing somebody in an interview who has applied for a higher position that, oh, this is a promotion, and you're getting $400,000 extra for the year, a 20% increase, you're evil. Because you know that what you're offering is below the pay scale of that role. They're moving from a lower position to a higher position. And instead of you paying them what the position commands, you go into that meeting and you convince the person to take a lesser amount. That is evil. And people, they do it all the time. Because it's just business. But is that a defense that you can use when you're standing in the halls of judgment? That is for the religious people, because you believe in heaven and hell. And I don't know how you believe in heaven and hell, but you go throughout your daily life just doing your job. Is that what you're going to tell Jesus Christ? Is that what you're going to tell Allah? I was just doing my job. Do you think that's going to fly? Because you are supposed to follow in the footsteps of your Messiah. What would Jesus do? These are the questions that you're supposed to be asking. This is what you're supposed to be asking yourself when you're in a moral quandary. What would Jesus do? If what you're doing is going to result in some harm or detriment to the other person, don't do it. It's that simple. It is just that simple. If what you're doing is going to result in harm or detriment to others, don't do it. And we're not talking about telling the truth. We have a saying, the truth might cause offense, but it is not a sin. The truth is always an absolute defense. We cannot go around doing cruel things to each other, and then we go to church and we're leading praise and worship. My God is an awesome God. And you fired somebody yesterday because you didn't like them. He reigns from heaven and earth. And you write up somebody because you didn't like them. Oh Lord, use me. And oh Lord, don't refuse me. And you're giving a testimony. And your testimony longer than for everybody else. And at the same time, you're in the workplace doing these micro acts of evil and telling yourself, convincing yourself that you have done nothing wrong. Guess what? The truth don't need convincing. I don't need to tell myself a story if what I am doing is right. You just do it. You don't have to think about it. But if you have to say, well, I'm doing my job, I don't want to lose my... If there's a but, if there is a but, and you have to come up with some excuse as to why you're doing what you're doing, you're in the wrong. Your integrity cannot be for sale. Your morals and your values cannot be set aside for the sake of business. And if that's who you are, that's who you are owning. You can't be religious, but you walk with your morals and your values and your integrity in a bag. And when you get to work, you leave them with, you sign it in with security. When I'm coming out, I'll take it back. It doesn't work like that. How many of you who hold the title of being a Christian or whatever your religion is believes that your Lord and Savior, your God, is pleased with you right now? That's the question. Just ask yourself, do you believe the way that you are living your life right now, God is pleased with you? The way you conduct yourself in the workplace, God is pleased with you. Is it well with your soul right this minute? If the Lord should come right now, where will you be? It is just that simple. Because every moment of our life, our ticket can be punched. We never know how far death is away. So we always have to live our life as if it is our last moment. Do good, always. You have to understand you're in the devil's playground. And if you're winning, newsflash, you're evil. If you're winning in the devil's playground, you, my friend, are evil. So do you want to win here in this fleeting life? Is this where you want to be winning? Is this where you want to be winning? Thou shalt not kill unless your boss tells you to. And on that note, I want to end this video. Thank you for watching, and once again I invite you, if you like this video, please, the way the algorithm works, you have to like the video, you have to share the video, and you have to subscribe to the channel in order for other people to see it. If you watch the video and like, oh my god, this is so nice, I wish everyone could see it, no one is going to see it unless you engage. It is just how the algorithm works. You have to share it. You have to leave a comment. You have to leave a like. Because when you do that, the algorithm is like, oh wow, there is some activity here. So let me go ahead and push it out to a few more people to see if they like it. And how the algorithm know that you like it is when you engage. Like, share, subscribe. That's how it works. I don't like doing this because it's just like, you know, I just want to do the video and post it, but then if nobody watches it, then it's largely a waste of time. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.